Guys, we'll get started. Okay. Sam, could you karakia, please?
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai, ihi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mo. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there any identification of extraordinary business? None. Conflicts of interest, new conflicts? None. Public forum? None. And we go on to the terms of reference as a minor amendment for Megan. So we'll just note that that's there. Thank you. And there's a confirmation of minutes of the last meeting. Which is there any amendments? Would someone like to move the minutes? Yes. Phil and Elizabeth, thank you. All those in favour, against, carried, thank you. The chairperson's report. I apologise for not having it writing, but I had other things on for the last few weeks, which have meant that I haven't been able to do it. It's quite surprising in the time since our last meeting. I've been to 23 meetings on either council meetings or on behalf, so it's really quite surprising how they mount up when you start looking. But one of the most interesting ones I went to was St John. I was asked to go to St John's in Darfield, and they run a mock council meeting for one of the badges they get through St John's. So that was 3 nights, and that was really interesting to watch them. They had to draw a township with all the buildings and where they went and the reasons they went there. And then they had a council meeting to argue over the funds and all that sort of thing. So that was an interesting night. Also been to several meetings on organising Christmas in the park and Santa's Grotto, and after 10 years I've given that away, so someone else is doing it. We've at CHET, which is Coleridge Habitat Trust, we've got a new coordinator, and that seems to be really well. We're funding other projects which has never been done before, so that's earlier on we had a Chinese Minister of Education come to Rewiali, which was an interesting day to see all the bodyguards and all the entourage that were with him and all the cars was quite unbelievable. Went to had the History Fund meeting, which is the community. All the community committees have got together, and so we had a meeting with them a few weeks ago, and they're really interested in obviously what funding is going to be available for heritage in the future. So that was it. The Culture Fest went to that, and I think that was probably the best one I've been to. It was well organised, well run, and using inside made a difference. So I'd like to thank the staff for all the effort that went into that, because it was great. And I was asked on behalf of the Westview Fund that I'm on to go to Darfield Bowls to open this. They put new fences around, which were paid for by Westview, so that was another day. And then Phil and I sat on the Heritage Fund last week for buildings and such like, and it sort of makes you realise that the fund is 40,000, and we had $200,000 worth of people wanting funds. So I think it's something that we've got to look at in the future of just how our funding goes, because it sort of gets to the stage whether you give everyone a very small amount and then the projects don't go ahead, or you just pick the best ones of them out and fund those. So that's something that I think has to be looked at. And I'd like to put my report, if I had a seconder, please. Malcolm, all those in favour, against, carried. Thank you. We'll now go on to the Executive Director's report.
Just in front of you is the report from the Executive Director, and I'm just touching on some activities underway. In terms of the Ageing Well strategy, which is a placeholder title, there will be an opportunity for a slightly more fulsome briefing and an opportunity for feedback at the 1st of November councillor briefing, and similarly with the Rangatahi strategy as well. Because there are some activities, including the Swell event earlier this week, there's great opportunities to start our engagement. So that's why we have proceeded with some of that engagement early as those opportunities arise where there are the audience that we want to engage with. Just in terms of work underway, there's also a report being prepared that's not just a community services and facilities report, but it's a report of all of the council's contestable grants and funds that will be fed into the long-term plan process. It does consider what you've raised, Councillor Mugford, in terms of the level of funding. It also considers whether there's some purpose or direction changes for any of those funds, and it also identifies some opportunities for systems and processes improvements in terms of how those funds are managed, so that it's a more straightforward and simple process going forward. So there will be a more fulsome report that council will consider as part of its LTP process. And finally, the expectation might have been to receive the CSF fees and charges report in a separate format to the rest of the fees and charges updates. And so the decision has been made to bring those all together in one report, so that the council can see at a glance all of the fees and charges and the changes that are proposed. So that's just some work underway, that every one of those items, there will be further opportunity for councillor input going forward.
Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Denise. And councillors, you can get a sense that rather than bringing things in isolation or in silos, as part of the LT planning process and how we move forward into the future, we will be bringing you the whole information so we see it collectively, so you understand the impact across the organisation. And it's part of as we ask you to make governance decisions, we'll be asking you to make it across the whole of the organisation rather than silos related to portfolios. So that is a bit of a change up.
Sam.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I'm wondering, just the secondary schools students' tertiary scholarships, the existing scholarships remain, and this is an addition for these district-wide awards. I just wasn't quite clear whether it was replacing or taking them on. And as well as that, I'm just wondering, the decision around sports, arts, culture, and social good community wellbeing, is that what's that based on? And is that some feedback that we've received? And when I read that, I thought, are they related to our well-beings that as a council we're wanting to deliver? And then so we're trying to acknowledge young people who are delivering the things that we want to see delivered, or are these just things that young people are involved in? So just interested in why those four.
In terms of the first question, the intent is, or what has been prepared in that proposal, is that the grants that are currently in place associated with the specific schools within Selwyn remain. And what is proposed is that there are some additional awards, scholarships that are made available that are right across the district. So they're available to any young person who lives in the district. The original, or not the original, but some time ago, the youth count, the tertiary scholarships terms of reference was revised based on some feedback at the time and some information and that had been gathered. And at the time it was recommended that scholarship consideration could include those broader number of areas, because that was some of the other areas of that we had had previously received applications for that had been unsuccessful, but in effect that hasn't necessarily been how the decisions on tertiary scholarships have been allocated going forward. So while they were open for that consideration, by and large they have focused to some degree still on the academic achievement. So it was a way of, I guess, rebooting a bit of a stronger emphasis. So primarily sitting around the social and cultural well-being aspects and environmental in that regard.
Sophie?
Yeah, so I know that in theory, sorry, I wasn't going to ask about the tertiary ones, but some of your answers maybe have given me some of the questions. It would be interesting to, it's overall, even with the addition of extra, it's still quite a small fund. So I don't really want to be that niggly over, but it's quite a large impact on the students and the families that it's granted to. I feel like the answer we just had doesn't address the issues that we already have with the tertiary scholarships at all, which is things like the ward boundaries don't align with the school boundaries. So if the existing ones still remain, so for instance, Ellesmere has a fraction of the number of students at that age level that Lincoln and Rolleston do, but there's the same number of scholarships. Rolleston's students are spread across all 4 wards, but they've still got the same number of scholarships. But also the current system is very tightly linked to those high schools, and it doesn't account for kids who attend Kurako Papabori. Well, they can't attend that in the district, so they're automatically excluded from most of their scholarships. If they're going to Ara, they're excluded. If they're with Te Kura, they're excluded. It would be lovely to have all of the scholarships arranged by some sort of purpose, as opposed to what school you go to and where you live. Just make the whole thing district-wide. That's personal opinion. But the question that I was going to ask was around the other funds that we have. So, for instance, there's also SNEF, which isn't in here. There's the Natural Environment Fund. There's the Ward and Councillor Discretionary Funds. There's, in another report today, we've got a sports fund that's proposed. It's like, how many pots are we going to have, or do we review all of the funding options? Creative communities, like this is just a fraction of what exists. Sorry, thank you.
That's exactly the point, and it reiterates the point that Sharon was making. So what you're seeing in the report is an update on some of the key changes within the community services and facility administered grants only. The report that you can expect to receive will cover all of those other ones that you've touched on, because they are administered in other parts of the organisation. So that is exactly the reason. And in terms of the points that you have raised around that tertiary scholarships fund, I will note that and forward that into the considerations that are taking place at the moment.
And Lydia?
I just had a question about the Community Services Fund, and I was just wondering, is the Residents Association Fund still included under that?
Yeah, yes, it's a subset within that fund.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Yeah, in terms of the going into the separate high schools and having that scholarship, I actually like the system as it is now, because I think it gets fair representation across the entire district. I think that the issue that concerns me if we pull them all together is you actually find that there are so many good, kids that are all warrant to get it, that we could end up where it does become really heavy into one particular district. And because Rolleston does have a larger proportion of students, you might find that most of the scholarships will just end up giving to the Rolleston students. And I think I like the system now. I don't think it's broken. I think it gives a fairer proportion going forward. And I think that having a larger pool would make it a real nightmare for the people trying to sift through. Like, it was hard enough last year just trying to select kids because everybody's got some merit.
Tēnā rā tātou, Mr. Chair, kei te wiritanga te kaihoia te waka, tēnā koe, morena. I guess Sam's touched on it, and really it's the report shows an intended shape and alignment for, would you consider it to be efficiency? My question is pool of funding. I see here one of them is potentially a new, the contestable will be, the proposal will be new. My question focuses around the pool really and funding. Will there be an increase? Will there be an ask for increase of funding? I mean, that's what everything revolves around really, is the level of funding. Do we need to see an increase in that to continue to sustain our responsibilities within the 4 wellbeings under this shape or structure? And further on into it, it really, my question sort of reflects back on Councillor Hassan's comments in the minutes around what are our responsibilities and what can be some of the joined up approaches through central government, and what are our responsibilities within those spaces. Thank you.
Just in terms of the exercise, one of the points of the exercise is to consider where increases are warranted, if any, and that allows us to take a whole of council view to the different pockets of funding that relate to each of the different wellbeings. And as you will have observed in that economic development events fund, it's about potentially not needing to increase another fund if a subsequent fund takes some of the pressure or demand off another one. So some analysis being done at the moment around which funds might warrant an increase and which ones, if we reorganise, could continue as they are. It's also, as I said, about the purpose of the fund, whether or not we need to tighten that if we've got 2 funds that are sitting in the same category in terms of environmental. There's some work going on to make sure that it's much clearer what sits in one fund versus the other, because it's obvious there's a bit of confusion in terms of the applications. And then it's about having a more efficient way of managing the fund, so that the panel is likely to be proposed that one panel will have an oversight of all of the different funds, no matter where in the organisation they are administered, and understand. And the analysis will also be provided around what level of funding is given for what of the wellbeings that sit across that. How that relates to the interface with central government, I guess we are clearer about what funds we've got where and for the purpose, so we can enter into some of the dialogues around complementary funding with central government on that basis. But I'm also mindful that we are caretakers of other funds like the creative communities, and so we aren't at such liberty to necessarily create one process for some of those funds which come with their own rules and criteria. But we still think there's ways we can potentially be more efficient and effective about who the councillor might be that sits on that external fund, so that that information is being brought back into the same panel.
Nicole?
I think Sharon you were actually, well, I was just going to add, with the new government coming on board, we can't assume government agencies are going to have access to the same level of funding going into the future. So therefore, part of our intent to move forward is to make sure that we streamline and give councillors or the panel optimal use of the funding that will be available within council, because we know that we can perhaps no longer rely on funding being available through central government agencies. And we also know, as we move forward into our long-term plan, that it's going to be a really challenging process and time around costs. And so if we take a more centralised and overarching organisational approach, it's about making sure that whatever funds we do have, we give councillors the opportunity to allocate them in a sensible and prudent way within the 4 wellbeing structure.
Nicole?
Oh, it's been good to hear a discussion about the about these funds and also scholarships. I do want to back up Sophie on what comments she's made about the secondary school scholarships. This is actually even though this is my 3rd term on council, this is actually the first time that I have been involved with it, and I was actually quite surprised at how it was, because obviously in that Rolleston College has not been there that long, but in saying that, it does need to be fair, and to be perfectly honest, when you've got 2 of the high schools of probably twice the size of the others, it actually then sort of begs the question, what is fair? I can understand wanting to keep for each individual college, but we do need to look going forward on how we do it, and maybe Sophie's suggestion in keeping with the boundaries of the schools themselves, doing it that way may be a fairer system. I don't know.
Thank you. Deborah?
Sorry, have you got any?
No answer that night.
Thank you. Can I have a clarification, please, just on the with regards to the CSF fees and charges? There'll be an annual review. Aren't those fees and charges, when people apply to these funds, included in these funds, or are they separated? How's that plan to work?
Sorry if there is any confusion in the report. We're talking about the fees and charges that Community Services and Facilities Group charge for access to services and programs. So that's quite different than the contestable fund. So apologies if there was any confusion about that in the report. And what the report is saying is that rather than providing you with a report that focuses primarily or solely on those fees and charges that Community Services and Facility Services and Programs charge, they will be incorporated into an all of council report on fees and charges, so that you'll have visibility right across the organisation and in terms of what level of increase is happening and what's staying the same, and what the impact of that is at a high level in terms of operational costs, and how that relates to the revenue and financing policy that directs a lot of that.
Okay, thanks very much, Denise, for that clarification. I'm just conscious of the fact that central government has got a new government. Central government has to really tighten its belt with regards to its spending. And I'm conscious of, I'll just say, the 9-to-1 ratio, and thanks, Shane, for bringing that forward, where we collect a tax rate at, say, 10%, and we collect a rate take to fund local government at, say, 1%, 1% of that 10%. So you've got that 9-to-1 ratio. That to me is unfair. We've got all of these responsibilities that have been passed on to us down from central government. We don't have the funding, yet through the 4 wellbeings, I just see that we are actually having to increase our spending from the rating perspective to meet that criteria that's actually in the Local Government Act, without any support or funding from central government, or very little. I think there needs to be an improvement in how we, Sam, negotiate through Local Government NZ. to get some of that funding transferred across to us, like a discretionary fund.
Yep.
For us to help us deliver projects that they're not delivering.
That's all noted, Deborah.
Yeah, so I just want to comment because with regards to these sorts of increases, our funding could actually run away with us with regards to our prudent need to spend to make sure that
Yep.
you know our ratepayers are well looked after.
Yep.
So thank you.
No, thank you for that, Deborah. Yeah, Megan.
Kia ora. I have a question on the Selwyn Strategic Partnerships Fund, and no changes recommended except for a review in 2024 and 25. I wanted to know how much is the fund? Has it all been set? And will that review be the point in time where it will be reset as to who the strategic partners are? And also I've looked up the website to try and find out more about it and I couldn't find anything.
I guess where that comes from in terms of as a fund was that previously there were different arrangements that were held with different organisations, and there 3 or 4 years ago there was a process of putting some of this fund into contestable funds, and at that time there was a desire by the then council to retain some level of investment in some of those key organisations on the basis that they were strategic of nature and council might otherwise be expected to deliver such services. And so they were retained, but they're not in the normal sense of things contestable in the same way that others are. And it has traditionally, or subsequently, it's been made by an all of council decision as part of its long-term plan about these strategic partnerships going forward. But in answer specifically to your question, there will be an opportunity for a direction of travel to be indicated in the report that you can expect that the council can expect to receive around that. And there will be an opportunity for some feedback. And at that time, the report will include those organisations that currently receive that funding so that there is absolute clarity around it. And I guess in terms of a timing of a review is that there is an insufficient time for a review before decisions need to be made. But it needs to be timed because it does need to, the view of the team is that it does need to be revisited.
Yeah, Sharon.
Thank you. I was actually going to take it back to another subject within Denise's report, if that's okay. Yes. With regards to item 4, the ageing well in Selwyn strategy and Rangatahi strategy. And I wanted to say to councillors that we're really excited to be bringing these foundation strategies through as part of, as we work towards future Selwyn and the aspirations for the next 30 to 50 years. And I'm really heartened to see that we are bringing strategies forward and we'll bring them through to councillor briefings for input so that we start to get some of the core strategic foundations in front of councillors that help underpin our future for the next 30 to 50 years. And just want to congratulate Denise and her team for bringing that to the table. And it's really exciting to see these strategies being talked about and coming forward. So just bringing it back to a bit more of a strategic conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Denise. Do we have a mover and seconder for Denise's report? Sophie and Deborah. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Kelsey, can you come up for the awards review? Thank you.
Kia ora everyone, and I'd just like to extend a welcome to Megan as well here today. So the report prepared for you is in conclusion of the 2023 Selwyn Awards and to propose the direction for 2025. A survey was completed post the event and the general consensus that the event this year was well received. Changes for 2025 include developing a sponsorship strategy to ensure that the budget is met there, and we'll work on that. And that the team will review the standard of applications and achievement for each award and whether that needs to be adjusted upwards based on the demand of the awards now coming in. Thank you.
Any questions of Kelsey? Nicole?
I want to congratulate on doing such a fabulous awards thing. It was quite a pleasure to be there, and thank you. And it's great to see so many businesses that were coming through, but it's good to see that we're also looking at sort of the reviewing of it, because there was so many. It was actually very quick trying to get through it all. So great to see where, and it'll be interesting to see where it lands, this review going forward.
Phil?
Just basically just the same thing. An amazing night. You guys did incredibly well. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on how the venue went. There were parts of it that, obviously there's some challenges in the venue, the massive space and the noise, and how you managed to control it was amazing to see that. The splitting of the awards, I guess, business and community, that's the question too. Is that even a possibility? Thanks.
I can talk to the venue. So the venue we were really pleased with how the venue worked, and it allowed for us to extend the number of people that were able to enjoy the evening. In 2021, we had to restrict numbers, and some people were having to come by themselves because of those restrictions. So that was really well. There was some feedback around access to the bathrooms. So that will be considered as part of the planning for 2025.
In terms of splitting them, we have had quite a lot of feedback about how much people enjoy having business and community side by side, and the opportunities that provides for people to think about sponsorship and think about their community group as part of a wider economic context as well as the community context. But we will certainly consider in terms of growth and how we start planning for future events.
Lydia?
Congratulations, Kelsey, on running such a large scale glam event. An incredible job you've done. I think on the evening I had some feedback around the same people applying for every category, and so I definitely support a review into that, and that we actually have a lot of fantastic businesses and people operating in our area that aren't included. So my question is how are we going to target these people and businesses instead of being self-nomination? I think a lot of them are too busy to even think of nominating themselves for something. And I was interested to know what the total cost of holding the event was when we're looking for increases.
So 100% as part of the review, we will be considering how many awards categories people can apply for, and whether that should be limited, as well as if you were the overall category winner one year, coming back the next year, what does that look like? In terms of the cost to the event, I can't tell you the exact number right now off the top of my head, but it's around 200.
Thank you.
Sam?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, it was an awesome night and support what the others have said around that. I think Hillary did an amazing job at keeping the nights together, and the importance of having a quality MC, I think, is needs to be considered again as we move forward. I had the same feedback from people around holding an event that showcased all of Selwyn together, and there was a lot of sort of, I didn't realise they were here moments through the night with the people at tables that I was at, and they were excited to see that the range of award winners that are here. And it was cool that the event supported so many local businesses and the way it's food and the preparation and stuff as well. The self-nomination, I think, is a good move because it then enables you're not sitting around waiting for someone nice to come and knock on your door, and they can still do that. But it just means if you do want to put yourself forward, you can. The only other thing, piece of feedback that was looking for maybe a bit of a change is thinking about when you've got 140 applicants and over 100 people they're getting an award. For those that didn't, you really stand out when you don't get an award. And I think if we're going to give awards to 90% of people, then finding the right level of acknowledgement for that final 10% would be a good thing. I know there were people that had paid for whole tables that had come with their whole team that didn't receive anything, and they felt a bit left out. They said it was a great event, but they felt a bit left out. So just thinking about how we work with that gold, silver and bronze moving forward. Yeah, thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I agree with the summary conclusion of what people have come back and said. So one of the things I really would have loved on the evening was a lot more information about the applicants, especially the winners. Like there was one particular winner and it was just a name. I had no idea what the person did or what they'd won for. I do feel that no applicant should be able to enter more than one category. And it did get a bit of a vibe that there was a few people that just were nominated or put themselves forward or got put forward because it was just a business advertising opportunity. It just would be nice if there was a bit of criteria around it, so you sort of felt there was something a little more community focused on the reason for the applications. And overall though, I thought it was really brilliant. Obviously the toilets were way. And for some people that's a bit of a juggle. And I loved meeting my community, being at a different table and just meeting a whole lot of people and hearing their story. So that would be a really good part to really engage with in the community, is having some of the details going forward. Cheers.
Thank you. Shane?
Oh, kia ora. Thank you very much, Bob. It sounded like a fantastic, wonderful event that I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, and it sounds like Hillary did a really good job. On growth, how big can we go before we hit capacity? Was there any feedback on stay overnight sort of thing? If they could stay, we would have turned up, and how is that feeding into our economic growth, I guess? The contributions in kind, is that offered for all of the sponsorship, those that sponsor? And how do we encourage, or is it purely just a celebration of Selwyn and all we have to offer in Selwyn, knowing that we do export globally and nationally? And is there any interest in seeking support or interest from up and down the country from other areas, or perhaps through local government? Thank you.
So I'll just start with in terms of growth. So we can seat 1,000 in that space, and we had 620. So there's a lot of room for growth, but that obviously would create challenges with the amount of awards and things as well, and cost would go up as well. Contributions in kind sponsorship is available, and in previous years we did have a higher uptake on that in terms of food and beverage than we did this year.
Yes.
And do you want to speak about the economic impacts?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're looking at all the time, the opportunity for people to stay an extra night or come out and stay and so on. So definitely it's something that we're building all the time and that we could definitely wrap around this event as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Sophie.
Yeah, kia ora, team. Thank you very much. It was a really good night. I think for me, the most exciting part of the report is actually the bit that says building on the brand, because it's actually not just the night. The night's like the fancy let's gather type thing. It's actually what you do with it the rest of the year that's probably more important. So it's good to see, because you do see people with their plaques in their windows or, you know, reception desk or on their website and all that sort of stuff. So it'd be great if, yeah, I look forward to seeing more around that part, because yeah, the night is an investment in the rest of it, for me anyway. The only thing I was going to say, my husband asked me to comment on the music, which is mentioned positively in the report, but just to say that we had some comments around our table. What the hell's this? Because it was quite a generational choice of music, and I think we might be slowly losing the number of people who recognise Rawhide, stuff like that. But yeah, thanks.
Thanks for that, Kelsey. It was a great night, it really was, and I don't think any of us probably realise how much organisation is put in by the staff to run something like this. It's pretty phenomenal, because I've been to a lot of conferences and such like all over the place, and there wasn't a lot of them that actually would surpass what we did there. So it was a great night, and thank you. And would someone like to move that report? Phil? And Nicole, all those in favour? Against? Thank you. Ginny?
Jenny, are you going up?
Kia ora koutou, tēnā koe Megan, welcome. Just initially want to thank Jenny Barnes-Graham, our community policy analyst, who put together a fabulous report. Also contributions from our property and infrastructure team, and also our finance team from Enabling Services. So it's been a bit of a joint effort across council, this one. Just to give you a little bit of history, back in 2020, the report on the future of the community centre made some assumptions that all of the groups using the community centre would move into Te Ara Atia and the sports centre. Both of those facilities opened and we're pretty much immediately at capacity. And we had a budget in that long-term plan of 443,000 to repurpose the Rolleston Community Centre into a sort of an arts space, including some studios, a home for performing arts. What happened, I guess, consequently was we still needed a home, a place to host a huge amount of community groups in Rolleston. We still get 50,000 visits a year coming into the community centre, predominantly community groups, some church groups, martial arts groups, groups that don't have any other place where they can meet and gather and recreate. So what we're coming to you today for as a committee is to say to not spend that 443,000 this financial year, but potentially to move it over the next 3 years. So a bit of a change in direction. Also to look at potentially purchasing some equipment, which could be around things like staging, sound, carpet. They're all things that we could use in another venue. We could use at the sports centre if we're hosting functions there. It would enable us to start to attract some sort of big events out here in Rolleston. So not making any sort of structural changes, but enhancing the asset and enhancing the existing user group experience in there. So we've also requested to allocate some of that funding to look at needs analysis over year 2 and year 3 of the long-term plan, which will look at what type of community facility do we need in Rolleston and where is the best location for that. So that is, do you want to?
Yes, so just to report back to you more specifically about the usage data in March 2020 when the previous report was presented. The feedback from council was, can we please have some usage data? And then of course COVID shut a lot of things down. So we are coming now post-COVID to give you that data. So as Ginny has said, there's a huge amount of community group usage. So 92% of revenue is from community groups rather than corporate, which is slightly different for other community centres. Over 97% of the groups, they require spaces for groups up to 100, so under 100 groups. To give you an example, the stadium, that hiring of that space, which is the most popular booking space, so about 86% of the bookings are for groups under 50. So there's very few large scale events. There are a couple like the science fair and art exhibitions, but they're staggered over like a number of hours. So it's not a condensed amount of people at the same time. So the options that Ginny and recommendations that we put forward, although I see in the printed version that the recommendations have fallen off the document, and we can perhaps table a report later on. So which has those recommendations for your perusal. So the recommendations we're making are non-structural for the next 3 years, and they basically satisfy the need for the smaller spaces. And as Ginny has made reference to, you would be able to relocate things like stadium curtains to other facilities if required. You're looking at portable staging and carpeting, stage lighting and sound upgrade. These are things that can be used in other areas or facilities. How we came to the conclusion of what to focus on for the repurposing of the non-structural repurposing, we used a solution matrix and we based it on our council and CSF criteria, and then we scored it and adjusted it for the most important criteria. So things we looked at were the cost, community availability, because we know that a lot of community use is going on. It flows within the wider town centre because it's in a great location. Desire for arts, because there's a lack of arts focus areas in Selwyn. Equity, easy implementation, and also lasting function. And on both matrices, before you applied extra weighting to some of the more important criteria, Rolleston Arts, Community and Youth Centre scored the highest. And I'll pass it over to Ginny again.
That need for a youth space has emerged as well, and it's incredibly exciting to be hosting the Integrated Youth Hub over this year and into next year to see where that lands as well.
Can I just, Mark, when you are going to speak, can you just clarify so that there's no confusion around the money and that it's already allocated within the LTP? That's what's up for discussion here. It's not new money that's been asked for. Can you just clarify that?
Sure. Yeah, so the budget is currently in the current financial year. It's provided for this, so it's funded, and so it's just a process of moving that forward into the next 3 financial years as part of the LTP. So it's an opportunity that we can reprogram that work as we're developing the LTP. So it's not new funding. It's just putting it forward a bit and spreading it out to be able to do this work.
Questions?
Thanks for this report. It's interesting to see this come back. The community centre and the community, well, particularly the ones who've been here sort of the longer time and been involved with fundraising and getting it built. There's quite an attraction, everyone sees this as quite a focal point of the community, and there was quite a bit of angst when it was talked about the fact of what was going to happen with it after Te Aratia and the sports centre were opened. I was on that committee during that time and on the first term, and repeatedly said that there was nothing, we hadn't decided what we were doing with that, because we had honestly no idea of who was coming out of the woodwork who hadn't been able to book in that facility, because we had long-term bookings that were rolling over. But there was no way when I was saying that I would have envisaged how many groups there were actually there. So it's great to see, and people know then I wasn't just saying something for the sake of saying it. There was actually extra need out there. And this is where, like, going forward, what happens with this. And I sort of struggling a bit to get my head round, like with the stadium and having partitions up and those sorts of things. So, going forward, I'd like to have more sort of clarification on that and where it's being used and such like, because that's a very big echoey space at times. Now, we've been talking about the arts. So you do have some art groups who are in the community who have given expressions of the use that they want to use. It is my first question. My next question is, so the figure that we've got on page 35, which is explaining the current demand challenges for the community centre. Now, one of them that says a handful of groups would prefer exclusive usage. Now, I know of some groups out there that are looking for space. We've got the Toy Library, who is still in containers. We did been involved with discussions and trying to maybe seen some space at the community centre, obviously wasn't available. So they're a group that is still out there. We've obviously had the RSA who were wanting to go into the Foster House. I'm not sure the situation that they've got now. We've also, I'm aware of other groups that potentially wouldn't mind having a space where they could set up. A number of these community groups actually see the opportunity of, if there's a building that comes available and then that's no longer used, and then utilise that, which probably isn't the best way going forward. So where the council has actually looked at maybe having somewhere that a building potentially that groups can have use, exclusive use of parts of the building and going forward. I don't know.
I'd just make a comment around that in terms of a strategy that had been programmed and is still in, I guess, the medium-term intent, that both the rangatahi strategy and the youth strategy will potentially reference, and that is a wellbeing strategy that looks at the needs of a broad range of community groups and the potential that there is for something akin to a community house type of activity. And that is also a consideration in relation to some of the community centres that are underutilised across the district.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Elizabeth?
Hi. In regards to the church use, it has been quite popular from what I can see with different churches. Now that there's a new church being built in Rolleston, will that give will that take away that great requirement for the community RCC to be used? And in terms of the Rolleston College auditorium, so Sophie tells me that that's quite restricted in terms of people being able to use it and quite costly. But we were talking in one of our other sections later today about wanting to work with the MOE so that we're not just, you know, creating buildings for the sake of buildings, but actually having multi-purpose building. So I think we should really be looking at starting with the current auditorium in that case, so that, you know, if that's something that we can do to take away a bit of pressure from us creating the arts so the RCC into, you know, something that we've already got just down the road, that would be really great to see, to whether we can explore that option. And just trying to see if there was anything here which specifies how often they'll be needing to require the building for arts, the main part. The layout of it all, and just because obviously with the sports complex, like we're looking for, as was mentioned earlier, different groups are needing different facilities. So the sporting facilities like gymnastics and obviously a toy library, and it would be really great to just see how things work. I know that the gymnastic group have said we'd rather leave our stuff out, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily cost effective option. It's a nice to have. You know, when you do go to sports groups, you do have, unfortunately, like if you do band practice, you have to set up and you have to take down. You know, we need to be really wise and prudent with our money. But yeah, thank you for what you guys have put through here. It's a really good read.
Just in some of the church figures, the worship groups, so the Hope Presbyterian Church, yes, will be open shortly. So that will take some pressure over one of the larger spaces, which is for use, and that Ginny and her team provide. But there's actually quite a number. There's another 5 or 6 groups who utilise the RCC at this stage. And in terms of gymnastics, actually, their percentage is actually quite small of a number of the bookings. The largest booking group within sports is martial arts. Yeah.
Do martial arts need much for setup, or is it just to turn up and use an empty facility?
We store all of their mats, so they have quite a requirement for storage. I think the more ways we can use a facility, then the more groups benefit. So once we start getting locked into an exclusive user group or a permanent setup, such as an auditorium, that suddenly means that a whole other range of groups can't use those spaces. So what we have learnt along the way in managing our facilities and venues is multi-purpose, multi-use, multi-generational groups of people coming together. So the toy library, we've been in conversation with them for years now, I think 8 or 10 years. I feel for those groups. We're such a new community. We don't have those sort of older buildings or places to locate those who require sole use. We were in discussion, Denise and I, with the toy library prior to when we knew that the Rolleston Library were moving out, but we weren't able to meet their requirements. Again, it was around exclusive use, an incredible amount of storage. I guess the comment about the different arts groups currently there, we have a massive amount of craft groups. So one of the ideas we're wanting to use is the old garage into sort of a messy art space. We have dance groups. We picked up an aerial artist last year from Expression of Interest. So as groups move on, such as the church, we're in the process now of getting next year's Expressions of Interest in. So it just enables us to go out to the community and invite other user groups. So we picked up something like 11 different user groups last year through the Expression of Interest process. So as soon as someone moves out of Rolleston Community Centre, there'll be people lined up to move back in.
Just to add to Ginny, one last thing. Sorry, Denise. Cultural dance was a huge story that came out of this usage data. There's a huge amount of cultural dance going on at Rolleston Community Centre from a wide range of minority groups, as well as the more generic Irish, Scottish dancing. Yeah.
Just in regards to your comment around the Ministry of Education, absolutely, all of the council teams are very keen to have that strategic conversation with the Ministry of Education. We are mindful that that there is an existing auditorium in the current facility, and when we were in discussions, Mark and I, not so long ago, there was also plans for another auditorium in their new build as well. And so in the activity that's proposed in year 2 or 3, looking at the future use, it does need to take into account those facilities that exist in the community that might not have existed initially, so that it's not necessarily that council delivers all of the facilities that are needed by the community.
Phil?
Yeah, just to be a bit careful, and I want to make it quite clear that I've taken off my centre stage hat completely, and I'm declaring that I am on their executive, but I am not speaking on behalf of centre stage at all. I have a question, Mark. Thank you. I read your report from 2020. I went back and I read the entire thing, including the report from what's it, Mark? The Global Leisure Group. Thank you. It was a good report, and I noted in that report there were some certain recommendations made for the repurposing. I do note, and my question is, not saying that Youth Hub isn't an amazing thing, because it is a fantastic thing. How did youth get involved in the Rolleston in the Rolleston Community Centre when the recommendations made in 2020 by this table were around, and I read, repurpose the Rolleston Recreation Centre as a primarily an arts and recreation centre, to refit the spaces for the performing arts, the craft art spaces, music, film, sound recording, blah, blah, blah. And to overall, while youth is included in those agreements, it's not specifically youth. So my question is first question is around how did youth get involved? I've gone through other meetings since then, and at no point did this table decide to put youth into that recommendation. That's the first thing. Second thing is picking up on what Nicole was saying. I'm so pleased that you're talking about doing a needs analysis, because oh my gosh, this community is growing at such a rapid rate, and there's the needs of the community. I mean, I envy our smaller communities with their old halls and everything else, and and we look and go, wow, we have a district park down the road, or whatever it's going to end up being. Maybe there's some thinking that we need to be doing in our long-term planning about what happens in that space there for our community groups. So that's I'm saying that now. And my last question is and this is where I remind you that my centre stage hat is off, but I am an expert in the performing arts, and in terms of your resetting. I think it's fantastic what you're talking about doing with that space. You put in the curtains. I presume the curtains could be pulled back, so that's brilliant. And yes, there is some concerns about sound there, but it should be addressed too. A lot of the sound things. So that's looking at that multi-purpose space. Yeah, well done. They are my three. That's 2 questions, 1 comment.
I'll just start the response off and invite Mark to perhaps comment, because you're referring back to a report that he was the author of. But in terms of youth and youth participation, I guess those consultant reports are a moment in time, and it would be fair to say that sometimes some of those groups that are engaged with as part of the consultation are not an exhaustive list, and there may be opportunities going forward to engage further with others. And I think that my sense of that is that there were some limitations in terms of how many groups were actually engaged and consulted, particularly in terms of those representing youth. But I think there was always some understanding that within even the broader arts community there were youth interests as well. So I would conclude that by saying that it subsequently the area of young youth and youth needs has become much more obvious and overt to the council. But Mark, you might want to comment on, you were a part of that original report.
Yeah, with the original report, obviously it's 3 years ago now, and a pretty dynamic environment in Rolleston in terms of things changing, particularly from a community facility point of view. A year ago, you might have gone and asked people something and got quite a different story. So as Denise said, it was a moment in time when we did that report, and that's what came through strongly at that point in time in terms of the assessment work that was done. It certainly wasn't, it didn't exclude youth. It was certainly inclusive of youth as part of that. And I think what the latest information is picking up on is that there is a strong need in the community for youth to look after the needs of youth. The population's even changed in that time. When you walk around Rolleston, you can just see the age group that's predominant. And so it has changed. And I think the report's reflecting that.
Sorry, I wasn't saying anti-youth. I absolutely accept what you're saying. Youth and the youth hub is a fantastic thing. Why at the Rolleston Community Centre?
I think because it's a space that's already there, that's available.
We know that it's a space that's already being hugely under demand by every other group that can't find the space.
Yeah.
So, and don't get me wrong, this vital thing that we are doing, we've put into a space that was already oversubscribed by your own words. Is heavily subscribed more than any other group, any other place in Selwyn.
I think one of the things about the Integrated Youth Hub and working really closely with them is that they sort of have set hours that they're in that old library space. So we are able to utilise that space both evenings and weekends. So we have a choir group, for example, that use it one night a week. We have a Fijian church group that use that space in the weekends, sort of that you'll be familiar from the tour, that open sort of area space. So again, it's not about exclusive use for any groups, but right place, right time. I think it worked really well. And it's a model that's being trialled, Denise, I think. So I guess all I know is that we don't know what it looks like again in another 3 years. I think that's what we've learned from 3 years
I think we need
ago.
to be careful as we go forward when we do our comprehensive needs analysis.
That's right.
That we don't over polarize the fact that this youth hub is already there, because the youth hub is needed in the community. But we're talking about the use of the Rolleston's only community centre.
Yep. And agreed, which is what,
except Te Aratia, of course.
which is why we're prioritising the needs assessment work. We have to get a really good understanding of our community, of their needs, what's required in Rolleston, and what is the best use of this community centre moving forward.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, Sam?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Great to acknowledge that we're in a space that's dynamic and where we're changing. And you mentioned the population and the demographics even of this town over the last 3 years. It has gone from low 20s to now over 30,000 people. So just, there's a big need for this type of work. Ginny, I was thinking about when I first met you, you were probably working in this facility,
I was.
and probably no one here knows this facility better than you. And so thank you for sticking with us as we've gone through these changes and bringing your expertise to this conversation, but now being able to see the broader need across this town and what Rolleston is going to need. Is a couple of things. I support what the direction that we're going and the repurposing of the money and thinking about the spend of that and where it sits. But when we think about the comprehensive needs analysis and where we move forward, that starts to raise what goes where. And as we've changed, did we put things in the right place in 2018 or in 2012 or in 2007? And what else might need to change as we look at this change? The dog park has come up through. Has been mentioned, is that the right space for that facility at the time it was? Is it still now? And how do we go about a conversation that looks to move a facility that's there. And that the community uses, it's not necessarily an easy change, but it is actually grass and fences with a couple of buildings. So it's not as hard as moving the community centre where this conversation started. The Scout Hall that's there in the town centre as well. Is that now the right place for Scouts to continue to meet, and how wide does that conversation go? So be keen for us to think about those other sorts of facilities that are around that have been identified before as we think about the needs analysis going forward. And lastly, for me, the 8.5 million that's in the report, that's really so that we're giving approval for staff budgets as they come back to us to have a placeholder for 8.5 million. That'll then be the discussion through the long-term plan. The decision today isn't about approving that spending.
That's great.
Sharon?
Thank you. I was just about to clarify. There's just taking the words right out of my mouth. And just be really clear, this is funding. There is funding in here that's within the long-term plan. We want to be transparent. We've brought the paper back to be open and transparent. It is dynamic environment. It is very fluid. And we just, are committed to being transparent to you as councillors, rather than us just making the change. Say this is what the needs are. This is about repurposing. This is about utilising the best way the funding that has been allocated into the LTP, but with an eye to the future as well. We've seen the data. We know what the growth looks like. We know the data in terms of growth and youth, particularly in Rolleston. And it's this is about how we can best maximise our current facilities whilst we in agenda item 3 turn our eye to the bigger picture and maybe look at needing to reset ourselves in terms of where we build into the future. And that fits all part into our long-term plan, but also into the future Selwyn as well. And to give you some comfort, there will be some workshops coming up. And I think probably in November, where we'll be bringing some papers and thoughts and considerations to a workshop to work through with you about what the future might look like.
Deborah?
Thank you. Look, can I just go back to the recommendation itself? Because I'm just a bit surprised that the recommendation in 2B talks about 145,000 for the comprehensive needs assessment. Then you go down to recommendation 3 below, and it talks about a community needs assessment for Eastern Community Network and Rolleston. So I'm looking at that being in the Greater Christchurch Urban Development Strategy location, Eastern. But if I go to the Appendix 2, and you say this is all funded, I see that 71,500 is funded, but then am I calculating an extra 71,500,000 for a futuristic needs assessment cost that needs to be also put in there, because your figures don't add up. Appendix, and you've got where you've come to Appendix 2, right at the back, Appendix 2. You've got in there already funded 71,500. But then if you go to the recommendation itself, you talk about a needs assessment of 71,500 be rolled over into year 2, and 71,500 be rolled into year 3. So they are 2 lots, but you've only funded one in your recommendation appendix at the back. So I just want clarification.
It's in year 2 and year
around, are you actually asking us for another 71,500 for another needs assessment to cover what's in appendix 3?
It is in there.
It's
in there. It's listed. If you look under the
Yeah, I saw that, but
so we have listed under year 1 of the LTP, we would be having in year 2 of the LTP, it would be 71,500, and then in the final year it's the only cost, so it stands sort of a bit more prominently. So maybe that's where the confusions come from.
You've in your appendix, you've got a needs assessment, right? That's currently in the LTP at 71,500.
It's out of the 443.
That's appendix 2, sorry, on page 50, okay?
Yeah.
And then you've got in the year 24-25, you've got a needs assessment at another 71,500, okay? And that comes to your 443. Okay, for the total for all the years.
Yeah.
But if you go and read the recommendation itself, you have a word and. Sorry. Yeah. Go back, hang on.
It's in both.
So we've got the Rolleston Community Centre be recognised as arts, A, and then we've got 443, which is appendix 2, which covers the 71,000. Then we've got 300 for construction, 145, which is the needs assessment of 71,500 and 71,500. So that comes to 145. And then you're talking about a comprehensive needs associated business case to be undertaken in years 2 and 3, and with the wider community. And I can't see where it says and provide an independent RCC assessment. You're saying that that's actually already catered for. Option 3 is catered for in our long-term plan.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
You're not asking for any additional money.
And that should read 143,000, 143,000. There were last minute adjustments to that figure. So
Yep.
To 2B it should read 143.
Okay, so that should, so you need to adjust B.
Yeah.
So it's 143.
It's already, it's going to be covered in the LTP.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Right, so that's, yeah. Okay, you've answered the question, but I'm just saying that with the 271.5s, it just didn't add up. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies. Okay, that's fine.
Sophie?
Kia ora team, thank you very much. This is a long running project with so many people. It's like, sometimes it's it's great to be wanted. It feels like everybody's clinging on to you there. And I don't want to go into why different uses should be in there. You've got the analysis there. I love it. I just wanted to point out that as far as in terms of building facilities and everything, making sure that an existing building is as multi-purpose and useful as possible for the longest period is actually the cheapest option in the long run, in terms of finance and embedded carbon and all that sort of stuff. So actually just keeping the building running and able to be used by as many groups as possible is always my preference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shane?
Thank you very much, Bob. I'm a little bit more confused than when I started thinking about my question. Yeah. And I'll just keep it at a higher level. And thanks, Sam, for putting out that 8.5 million. Thanks very much for giving us a tour the last time we were in there. It brought home, I guess, the importance of a facility that provides a number of different uses, especially for our young people, and especially in health and the mental health. So thank you very much to yourselves and the staff and council for providing that. I guess a lot of the conversation really pinches around the original use and then the intended use of this building as we looked at building other facilities potentially that covered what was being used, what that building was already being used for. And as we look towards building a number of other community facilities in Rolleston and other areas, and all of the considerations, discussions and debate that we've had around other facilities, especially around the cost and cost escalation, it really, I guess, impinges on the next LTP. Are you confident that the 8.5 that is in the funding implications is accurate? Because as we've seen in the minutes, we have missed the mark on some of the other facilities in our last LTP. Does the existing facility fit within the PARS, our strategic network? Is the roll-on of existing budget sit comfortably with our professionals, Calvin, as we roll that 71 and 71 through into the next LTP? That to me, is that an accurate costing on a needs assessment, or is that a way of putting into the next budget so that there'll be an increase in there? Will be likely to happen. There's a whole lot in that stuff, but I think, are we fixing the past or reinvesting for the future? And as we've discussing, is there potential to actually build a new facility that actually encompasses what we're potentially going to have to do for Rolleston East, and fits the bill for the future? So I guess in here we've repaired something and then it started to leak again, but we're confident, we hope that it's not going to leak again. So that's really the call that I'm having at a big level, is perhaps we need to actually focus on bigger infrastructure to provide that level of service for the growth of the district. Kia ora.
In terms of the budget that's been prepared, the 8.5 million. So we've had that prepared by a quantity surveyor, and it's got every contingency you can imagine built into that. And also all the cost escalations that, as you'll know, construction industry cost escalations are way above inflation. So all of those things have been built into this particular budget. They've even looked at things like the potential, because of the age of the building, or part of the building that was built in the 2000s, for untreated timber and those sorts of things in it. So it is a comprehensive budget that's been developed for this, and we're confident with the information that we have around it at the moment that it's an accurate budget.
And I would just add to that the advice from finance was in the option D that the timing proposed for the needs assessment allows time for the comprehensive needs assessment to be completed and a more accurate budget. So we're factoring in the fact that there needs to be an opportunity to revisit to make sure that we have got the numbers right if there is some significant change. So that was about that timing.
Have you got anything else, Shane?
Oh yes, well really it's I'm happy with that, but perhaps we're looking forward to receive a more accurate budget and assessment. Perhaps we're receiving this today as information rather than what parts of this do we need to accept to ensure the building is fit for purpose and can continue to provide the services, and what parts of it are we receiving for information for future budget analysis.
The option D is that this will be going forward into the LTP process.
Yeah.
So we're not proposing spend any money that isn't already allocated in the LTP process. So it's the direction of travel is that you support it going forward for consideration within the LTP process. But again, there are caveats, and Calvin may well want to comment on this. It's very difficult to accurately project this far out around costs. And so considering the timing and the needs assessment and the fact that there will be another LTP process which will allow us to revisit the budget if we haven't got it spot on, is all factored into that recommendation. But Calvin, you might want to add something.
Not too much that as well articulated, Denise. Literally, when you are looking that far out, and we've seen through this period, the cost escalations were rapid and large. Look, I wouldn't think we're going to see a period like that again, but who knows? So yeah, having a best guess at where it is at the moment, because it does impact the rate intake right now, because we're funding that now. But making adjustments as we go through into a next LTP will be smaller than what they probably have been in the past. So we have to make best guess. We're not going to get 100% right. It is a forecast.
Malcolm.
Yeah, congratulations on the report and the work you've done. I see this as a coming of age, really, for Rolleston. I was around when the original building was put together by a community effort. And I do remember the people involved in that and the ownership they had in that building. Some of them still have in that building as it goes forward. And as our community has grown in the way it has, I think this is an ideal way of looking forward to support arts community and youth. And I applaud you on what you've done, and I think it's a good spend to go ahead and do what you're going to do. And if it hasn't been moved yet, Bob, I would move it.
Thank you. Phil?
Yeah, sorry to have a second bite. I just wanted to clarify, that's option C. I wonder whether we need to be extending that needs analysis. So that it's not just for it's for the whole Rolleston community.
Yeah.
That's it. So we can just take the word RCC and the opportunity for new facility, all that out. So it's an entire community needs. I guess my question is for 71,500 times 2 enough money to do that?
We did. I'll get Mark to comment. I guess we were trying to within the facilities network plan. There is an anticipated additional building, and we did think that there was value in bringing that consideration alongside the RCC. So not to consider the RCC future independently, but to also consider it in light of the strategic plan for this an additional facility, given the growth. And but it sounds like you're proposing that it be broader still, and that's a point that Mark might want to comment on.
Yeah, whenever they do a needs assessment, they always look far more broadly than just around the existing facility, and that includes looking at provision in the surrounding local authorities as well as what other providers in terms of the Ministry of Education, churches, all those sorts of things that provide community space. So it does encapsulate all that. I think in terms of the budget that's been put forward is very realistic in terms of being able to cover the work that's involved. We've done multiple needs assessment over the years since I've been here. And, you know, that sort of figure will definitely cover the sort of work that's required.
Do you think the wording's covering what you need to do, or do we need to just change the wording slightly?
It does talk about a community network, include a wider community centre needs assessment for the Eastern non-council network in Rolleston Township.
I just get that's the spirit of what the table's talking about is the entire Rolleston. I think maybe it should just be, it might just be easier to clarify, but actually have a wordsmithing that third one slightly.
I think we're happy with the wording and it's well understood.
Right, stop then.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you for that report, Janine. Just one question. When with the use that this building's getting, do you try and direct other people to other of our buildings that might not be utilised as much? Is that a possibility?
Most certainly we operate as a network of community facilities, and having one person who looks after our sort of bookings and emails as a first port of call means that if we're unable to host an event or a function or a group, then we certainly redirect them, particularly to some of our more kind of underutilised facilities. It's interesting for us that Rolleston people tend to want to stay in Rolleston. There's not a lot of appetite to head out to Green Park or whatever. But yeah, that's key for us, is to be able to satisfy our customers and put them into a facility if we can't accommodate them in their first choice.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a mover. Malcolm, do I have a seconder? Nicole, all those in favour? Okay, carried. Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah. Leah? Thank you.
We're just talking about the destination management plan that we have a draft of at the moment. So the full final plan will be coming to the meeting on the 1st of November.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Deborah?
Just one question. It's with regards to note 3 on page 52,181. You talk about the recommendations that will inform the economic development strategy budget. So while you say it's not going to cost us any money at the moment, do you expect, and how much from the economic development strategy budget will this actually cost?
We have put some money aside in an envelope in terms of economic development for consideration in the LTP, but we haven't been able to get the plan until now. So the kind of long-term implications of the plan are yet to be talked about.
I understand you've got no idea currently as to how much this is actually going to cost us out of that economic development strategy budget. A breakdown.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Lydia.
Thanks for asking one of my questions I had there, Deborah. I guess my question around this is, if we endorse this plan, are we then financially tied to it, even though we haven't approved any funding? But there's obviously an expectation that we will financially contribute to this. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was quite a lot of media interest in this yesterday on the radio. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting discussion around that and what financially, how that actually benefits the Canterbury area and the amount of money that goes into this organisation. So I guess I'm just looking at how do we justify financial contribution to our ratepayers.
We can, the author of the report is actually Christchurch NZ, so we can invite them on the 1st of November to come and speak to the plan and what their intentions are in terms of commitments financially. At this point, in terms of the draft, it's really about the Canterbury RTO, the Regional Tourism Organisation, indicating that there is a will and a plan to work collaboratively.
Mm-hmm.
So the financial implications of that haven't been discussed with us, and they're not known to us yet, but is a question that we can invite them to discuss when they come on the November the 1st, if you'd like them to attend.
Yeah, I think it would be good because, yeah, if we're endorsing something and there's an expectation of monetary value, if we're endorsing it, we're tied to it.
Well, I think it's quite clear from the point C that there are no specific financial implications, and to some degree, I don't want to be dismissive of the plan because I know that it's been a lot of people's work for a long time and there's been a lot of engagement around it, but it is relatively toothless until such time as the various councils decide to invest in some or all of the aspects that relate to them, and it is at the discretion of the councils involved how much they will do. So there is no. It is stating that there are no specific financial implications until such time as council decides otherwise.
That's right, but I guess there's an expectation with it.
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, I think it's really great. This is coming back to us. The first time it was presented, we were pretty disappointed. I thought underwhelmed by what was presented. There was a crew that were contracted internationally to come and deliver for our 4 districts and the city, and they had done a poor job. Christchurch NZ's now picked this up and done a whole lot of changes in-house. I've been involved in a few of those discussions on the back of what the feedback was from this room last time, and working with Claire and Shay, and also the South Island destination management work that was done previously, which highlighted the need to have a management plan rather than just marketing places and relying on what's the joint story of a place rather than just what does a business want to do and what's the impact of each business. There's a few things in here that I think are really important that we support, and they're changes from what we saw last time. On page 60, it talks about in the first paragraph down the bottom that in addition, the increased amenity and product development provides a more attractive district offering to local resident base of Christchurch. This existing market has potential for more growth, encouraging people to explore their own backyard, a welcomed lower climate impact visitor. And the biggest upside for us is Christchurch visiting Selwyn and the opportunity that provides. That's now really clearly at the front end of this document. We've got a particular key success measure that wasn't there before that we've inserted. Number 6, which talks about an increased percentage of Christchurch residents. This is on page 61 of the agenda. Increased percentage of Christchurch residents visiting districts in Banks Peninsula as measured by spend. So we've now got something specific that says we want that to be here. I think the team's done a really great work on the Selwyn district narrative around who we are. Before that didn't represent us, and now those that have done that work, that really shows through that it speaks to Selwyn. So thank you for rewriting that. The vision for the whole document, I looked at the pictures on page 84, and I think 3 of the 4 pictures are either in Selwyn or could easily be in Selwyn, and just shows the benefit of the districts to Christchurch when we're marketing the area to people. There's a couple of other particular recommendations on page 94, which is around dark sky, which was again feedback that this room gave the first time it came through 6 months ago, around how we move forward there. On page 99, 4.7 talks about cycle to sea cycleway, alpine to sea cycleway. And so thinking about what we're doing there from Arthur's Pass. And at the very end, there's a 4.13 on page 100, which talks about develop a loop bus trial in Waimakariri and Hiranui. And that was probably the only piece where I was looking through and thinking it's very specific to one of the areas. And actually, when we're thinking about what we might have to do locally to promote buses, and we know that there's a lot of interest in wanting better public transport, should that also have a Selwyn Ashburton loop, because they are missed out from that as well. So there's like a north of Christchurch and a south of Christchurch option that sits in there. I don't know how that got there. Maybe there's Waimakariri and Hiranui might be doing great work in that space that we're unaware of, but it just felt like there's maybe a missing piece there. But otherwise, thanks for bringing it here. And I think we should have Christchurch NZ here in the November meeting, because I think they have listened to a whole lot of the changes that we spoke to them last time.
Deborah?
Sorry, I get 2 bites of the cherry. Just briefly, with regards to endorses, the recommendation, it says endorse management plan draft. Is it necessary to have something around the expectation of funding? Because I don't want an open book with regards to this particular endorsement. Can we say we endorse in principle, subject to funding? Just clarifying that we're not locked into something like museum board.
I think, Deborah, if you read it, that it says there's no endorsement, no implications for funding. That's to go into the long-term plan, and I think that covers it adequately. Yes, you, Sharon?
Yeah, that's, I was going to say, point 3 notes that there are no specific financial implications associated with endorsing, and that if there is any financials required, it will be subject to LTP discussion and determination from councillors.
Okay, thank you. Shane?
Thank you very much, Bob. Yep, I'm happy to endorse it. I think anything we can do to promote the district serves us really well, and we've just spoken about the Selwyn Awards, so potentially all of what Sam said. Be important to extract out the information relevant to Selwyn from if they turn up here at 369k Christchurch and Z, to Lydia's question around what benefit, I guess, to the district and economic uplift, and perhaps some local champion voices reflected through it too, from perhaps some of the farm stays or some of those various tourist hotspot destinations that we have here. Really having that flowing through the document really nice. I think it's a lot better. It does reflect Selwyn and also mana whenua relationships as well. So well done. Happy with that. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, just going back to page 57 where you've got the map, you've got 1,004 million versus 129 million. Now, from what I can gather, the 104 million is domestic spend and the 129 million is international spend. Is that correct, Claire? So the highest spend across New Zealand is the domestic spend is what I've read. Yeah. So it's a significantly large amount of domestic. And I think that's something that we need to really consider strongly is that's our strength in terms of our tourism, because, you know, I visited Greece after it had, you know, had the struggle. And the reality is it's quite dangerous if you've got so much reliance on international versus domestic. So I think we're in a really healthy position that we've got it this way around. If we go to page 89, let me bring it up. Hold on. So 89 at the top there, you've got develop itineraries for visitors that highlight their CO2 emissions and recommendations on how to lower them, including lower emission visits, e.g. cycle trails through the districts, reusing towels in hotels, eating plant-based and local foods. So is there sort of an indication as to what that might look like? Are you talking about having an app or sort of putting restrictions on people in terms of their choice? Or is, you know, long term, could we be faced with that proposition that there's a requirement versus choice?
I think it comes down to choice and campaigns and the way that we profile the provenance story within the district. So we do that really well through the taste campaign that we do. And we do that through our storytelling through the Selwyn NZ website, where we talk about, you know, the way that people are producing food and some of the sustainability and other practices that are in Selwyn. So we do that more about highlighting the really great news stories and things, not by, you know, looking to limit people.
Sophie?
Yeah, I quite like it. I mean, it's definitely from a Christchurch NZ, but they've broadened out what they think. It's not, I mean, it mentions the city multiple times, but it considers the districts a hell of a lot more than it used to. And that's great. And I guess one thing was interesting around it, there's a recommendation in there about rangatahi committees, which was quite interesting. So I don't know how that'll feed into our youth strategy type thing or and whatnot, but we certainly have one that they could make use of. So that's kind of cool. And then it was quite good when they were reading about the types of travellers, and the largest type is the sophisticated travellers, which actually feeds quite nicely into our current tourism offerings, I think, with the food and the wine and everything else. And live performances, we could probably, you know, and a bus trail or whatever. What we choose to do with this is pretty much our business, right? We can endorse it. Yeah. It doesn't mean that we have to do anything.
That's right.
But there's a lot of it that's in there that we're already doing. It's just given us more dots to connect or more ways to connect it without having to go out and do the research ourselves. So I like it.
That's right. Thank you. And the other thing to highlight is that consumer sentiment around visitation is a lot around neighbourhoods and unique places, which we have plenty of. So that's a really great strength for us. And the other thing that it highlights is festivals and events, which is a fantastic growth opportunity for us as well.
Thank you. Megan?
Great. Kia ora. Majority of my questions are actually for the author, Christchurch NZ, and knowing that they're going to come soon to present, I'm going to reserve those questions for them. However, I do have one question about, it's on page 109, talking about the measures, and 5.10 puts Selwyn District Council as the lead for attract international students to increase the labour market and attract future talent. Why is Selwyn the lead? Is it connected to Lincoln University?
Lincoln University.
Yeah.
Can I just add in that Lincoln University has been bucking the trend nationally in terms of they've seen quite a significant growth in their enrolment compared to some of the other major universities, and they have a work program in place to continue that strategy.
So I would see this as we're agreeing to be the lead. That is something that we're actually tethering ourselves to, which is good.
Okay. Okay, is any more questions? Thank you for that.
Just
Peter.
one,
Oh, sorry.
Bob, there's, I think there might be an error on page 57 with the key, which may have created the confusion before. The top left-hand corner shows the spend in dollar terms to international and domestic, but the key shows international and domestic, which looks like it's the wrong way around, so that needs to be edited.
Okay. Okay, do we have a mover and seconder for that report? Malcolm and Sophie, all those who are against, carried, and we might stop for 10 minutes for a cup of tea.
Conversations, but you mean as well.
Yeah. Yes, oh, yeah, it's like it could have gone for an hour and all be Excuse me.
Am I good to go there, Mr. Chair? Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present a report on the community pools preparation for the summer season. It's fair to say that this will be probably the last report of this type that this committee sees. I think the history of this report has been that it's gone through audit and risk a number of times. Initially there were 25 actions, up to 30 actions coming from this report. And now it's almost business as usual, some of this information. So talking to Sharon earlier, I think there's an opportunity to put this in for information only into a separate folder, not take it through committee in the future. But yeah, Sharon, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yep, thank you, James. This is part of our transition that I talked about when I first arrived around moving those things that are business as usual into making sure councillors are kept well informed. And this is very much through the great work that James and the team have done. This is moving to business as usual. I can assure you that if there is a significant variation, we will bring that back to the table for comment. But if it is just our usual opening hours, then this will be the final time the committee sees this report.
Thank you. So just to run through a couple of things in there, Kalinchi Pool has been discussed a few times and communicated to the committee a few times. They struggled last year with water quality. We've discussed this with the volunteers. They're really keen to make a change and implement a roster. I'm hopeful that the pool will be open for at least a 6-week period as we track forward this summer, which is really good. The water testing course that we've run previously is also taking place again. That's an opportunity for volunteers of community pools, school caretakers and junior staff to jump on a course and get the information and the skills that they need to test the water. Recruitment is well underway and all at hand. Probably one of the minor changes looking forward into the hours that are represented in that report are we have had a late submission sort of from or inquiry from the Sheffield community around some tweaks to the hours of that facility. We're working with them to figure out exactly what that looks like, but essentially they've asked for the pool. This is going to sound interesting, but they've asked the pool to be closed a couple of days of the week, but the hours to be extended on other days. So just been working through that at the start of this week, and we'll again inform you in due course of that. Darfield Pool upgrade is progressing really well, and as you'll see in the report, there was some earthing requirements that we learnt from and rolled out to other parts of the district. One thing I just want to inform the people around the table about Darfield Pool is that there was some vandalism a couple of weekends ago to the pool liner, where a brick was thrown in on the brand new pool liner and there's 5 penetrations in the liner. So we're just working through that. We don't foresee that there's going to be any implications to opening day, but it does squeeze the time frame of our delivery of that pool up a little bit. We're hoping it'll be full of water basically now. We're probably another 2 weeks away from having that happen, just by way of repair. Happy to take any questions or comments on the report.
One.
Oh, sorry. With regards to the 15 vacancies for schools and caretakers and volunteers, are you writing to the school pools that are open and operate on a key system, because you will actually have an inventory of those?
Yes, we are, but also going out to schools that don't have a key system as well. So there's an order of priority of community volunteers first, school caretakers with community use second, and then school caretakers after that, and then we'll fill it with our junior staff from there on.
Okay, thank you.
Just with the vandalism at the pool, do we run security cameras at the outside of the pool?
Yes.
There? Because I think it's something that's sort of been happening for quite some time around youth entering the pool site late at night. And so I'm just, wondering.
We have footage and it's quite clear. So yes, we're working
Great.
through that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much, James. Kia ora. Appreciate the report. Looking forward to potentially the opening of some of these wee pools in and around the Ellesmere. Sad to see the level of interest or level of volunteers is waning, but I think way back when Murray Lemon was here, he did point that to the waning level of volunteerism around the pools. So I guess what is the future? And we were just having a discussion about that for some of these vested assets or these smaller assets that are only open for a short period of time throughout the year that continue to cost money and also require volunteers to run. So I look forward to a future report on that. Just with the report, I'm happy to accept that it won't need to come to committee, but what type of examples in terms of delegations would require it to come to this committee again? Is it for funding? You'll see there's a 30 in here for repairs. So where does the limit sit at the moment?
Yes, certainly any funding, major funding implications would come back to you, but also extensive changes to operational delivery and that sort of thing would come back to you as well. Where we're just recruiting staff, training staff and inducting staff, I think you can take that as read that that's going to happen every season and we don't need to inform you.
Well done, team. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the report. We've talked previously about the Sheffield Pool's future and how that's looking. This report shows it will be opening this season, and there'd been some previous discussion about how we might transition to a new outcome at the cost of opening for a season or two. The swims at the pool last season, I think, cost about $20 per swim. It was like $70,000 for the operational costs of the pool last season, and that money could be put into a new facility, the capital spends that needs to be shifted in that new pool. I just wondering, those discussions, have they been had locally with the community? Obviously this season's going ahead, that's money that we're contributing to keeping that pool happening. Is there going to be another report that's coming back to deal with those issues? Are you expecting them to be part of the long-term plan? I'm just wondering where that whole conversation sits at the moment.
Yes, the conversations are continuing with the community, and as you alluded to, the Sheffield Pool will run again this season. In fact, there's a meeting with the Board of Trustees at Sheffield School tonight with Lydia and myself. So we're progressing those conversations. There'll be a briefing, hopefully early November, around next steps with Sheffield Pool. Once we've gathered a bit more information, I think in the background we're working through a whole lot of potential costs that we might be looking at and some options development that will push through to elected members. I think that there is a really clear, we understand that the pool is broken essentially, and that the life of that pool is it's right at the end of its life. So there's not much that we can do about that in the short term. I think council has passed a resolution in a previous meeting around having it as part of the LTP conversation, including what indoor courts, indoor aquatics facility and the closure of Sheffield Pool looks like as a whole as for inclusion in the LTP. So it's already in there.
I forgot to put Grant's apology in at the start of the meeting, so could I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Lydia and Sophie. All those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. There we go with this youth council now. So
just to defer that item until the new year, we've just had some late apologies from two of the youth councillors who were intending to present. And while for any other report I would have found substitute staff, it's not appropriate in terms of the youth councillors substituting their representation for staff. So on that basis, it will be deferred to the new year, and they will continue to operate with a draft terms of reference as they go through their election process. And when it comes back in the new year, it may well have some further refinements based on the process that they're going through with the with the new youth councillors.
Okay. Would someone like to move that we accept Malcolm, Sophie? Oh, yes, and yeah, we can do that. And all those in favour, against, carried. Okay, we'll move resolution to exclude the public. Nicole and Deborah, all those in favour, that's carried. We'll now carry on with the Prebbleton Community Centre needs. Sorry.